Coogs house. Over the weekend, the Houston Cougars got their third commitment in 5 days. Don't let the Cougs get hot. Might be too late.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day, as the first listen of your day each and every day, like the everydayer that you are. If you want to do the conversation but you don't know what to say, tell us what your first response was when you saw the news, I guess the non-Houston Cougar news in the city of Houston of Kevin Durant becoming a Houston Rocket. It's kind of weird to put that all together. More on NBA stuff kind of in the third segment. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll talk about that later as well. But the first segment I want to make sure we get into is the Houston Cougars had some big-time commitments. We've got to talk about what they bring with this class for Willie Fritz continues to look like. Second segment, I want to talk about what future Cougs on the basketball court might look like after a weekend at TABC. And that third segment, I want to talk about Jarace Walker and some NBA kind of stuff. Let's get into it. So Houston Cougar football recruiting pulls in a third recruit in 5 days of the weekend in Scott Smith. They also had Kah'ni Watts and Bryson Castile in the previous couple of days. So let's talk about who these guys are first. Then I'll talk about the class and kind of how each of them ties in. So Scott Smith, 6'6", 230, edge rusher, long arms from Baton Rouge's Central High School, the same high school that DK Mays came to Houston from just a year ago at this point. Long wingspan, big body, frankly, built like the kind of guy that classically plays like three sports, power forward and tight end, defensive end, and you could see him playing first base or throwing the shot put or something. He's a well-built athlete. He had other powerful offers to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas Tech, and TCU. Houston, however, was his first Power 4 offer back in October 1st to be specific, and clearly that played a big part in his recruitment. Loyalty, like he continues to do with Willie Fritz, and these connections was a big deal here. Kah'ni Watts also committed earlier in the week. He's a weekend, I should say, 6'1", 175-pound safety from Iowa Colony. Both these guys are 3 stars on the high end of potential to continue to rise. I should point out that both Watts and Smith have seen that number score you see next to their star ranking move up fairly recently. I can see both are either becoming a 4-star with a big-time senior season next year. Watts is from Iowa Colony High School presently, originally from Fort Myers, Florida. That's making me feel like when we saw that tweet the other day from the staff that a bunch of them had hashtag Florida or Florida boys on it or whatever. I think they were talking about getting it verbal on their end from Kah'ni Watts at that point. He also plays wide out. I think he's coming to Houston to play safety because it sounds like that Coach ACY, Christian Young, was a big part of his recruitment and bringing him into Houston. He got invited to come to camp on June 11th, got the offer that day and committed later in the about a week later. Big deal here. We'll talk more about the Iowa Colony part of that in a second. We talked about this on Friday's show, I believe, but Bryson Castile committed. He was a visitor on the same weekend as Keyshawn Henderson and all those guys. A fairly star-studded weekend at this point 10 days ago or so. And Castile is talking to me about something. He is going to play linebacker at Houston. I'd put him as a box safety in my head. He kind of plays a weird hybrid position in high school. Some places had him as an athlete. Some places had him as a linebacker. He is a good coverage guy at 6'3", 195 pounds, though. And so that flexibility will offer some interesting stuff in this new Armstrong defense with him playing that linebacker spot. So these 3 guys round out. Houston's got up to 9 commitments in the 2026 class. It's Keyshawn Henderson, headliner, right? 5-star, all everything quarterback that is transitioning this Houston Cougar program. Obviously, we have the Connor Wegman show this fall. Austin Carlisle is involved, but Keyshawn is the future of this program at quarterback. But we've also added Aaron Walford, a 6'4", 290-pound tackle from PNG. Kevon Roberts is a 6'4" wide receiver. I'm just going in order that they committed here. 6'4" wide receiver from Port Arthur Memorial, a great jump ball catcher. Troy Pless, 6'5", 295-pound tackle from Colleen Shoemaker. Xavier Fleming's a 6 foot, 300-pound plug, run-stopping defensive tackle, defensive lineman from Louisville. And Jeremiah Bushnell is a 6'1", 185-pound receiver from Iowa, Louisiana. Not to be confused with Iowa. Trust me, they're very different places. And suddenly, this class is starting to take shape. You see the class is based on a lot of loyalty, a lot of guys that want to play for Fritz, for Nagel, for the system. You guys want to play with Keyshawn. Relationships is super, super important in this. Some of the Houston guys have also went out playing for the city of Houston. I mean, Kah'ni Watts, who's just recently moved to the area, has said that playing for a hometown is an important deal here. I want to point out that Kah'ni Watts is from Iowa Colony, and we're looking at finishing out this class this summer. It does sound like he and Jaden Warren, the 4-star, could potentially become a 5-star very soon wide receiver from Iowa Colony. Very close. Jaden Warren had his visit with Keyshawn Henderson. That team starts their weekend. We're talking about 10 days ago. Warren has set his commitment date for 7/13/7/13, July 13th. If you don't know, because you're not from there, whatever that is, the area code. And I feel fairly confident that there's a really good chance Jade Warden's a Houston Cougar, right? But people are putting the pressure on Kah'ni Watts to talk him into it as a teammate, right? And I think it's interesting to see here, too, the relationship building there. And I don't know who the next commitment is, if it's Ashton Roden from New Boston, Monty Martin from Port Arthur Memorial, Noriel Dominguez is a great 4-star linebacker that still has his pics of the Houston Cougar uniform from his visit day, his OV, as his profile picture on Twitter. He hadn't committed, but that's like still his profile picture, right? Paris Melvin, people are kind of moving and inching towards putting Houston as his number one. He hadn't said that yet, but like the different outlets are putting them as higher and higher percentages with Houston. He spoke glowingly about his visit, meeting Keyshawn, meeting the staff, and all of that. I don't know who the next domino is. Obviously, we'll be here at Locked On Cougars about whoever it is whenever it happens. But I do know that this class is rounding out spectacularly, right? A lot of people worried when we got to about mid-June and the classes overall ranking was probably lower than you thought it would be with a guy like Keyshawn Henderson in it. But truthfully, as we're seeing, that was just a function of how few firm commitments they had. It does sound like the staff thinks they've got another half dozen or more firmly committed behind the scenes. Kids want to announce their own dates, or they want to take the rest of their visits because they want to continue to get wined and dined, or whatever the case may be, or they went out together with a buddy, or they want work with their school and coach by doing a thing for it or whatever. Those are things that happen. High school kids get to do this once. Even in modern college football with transfers and all that, like this commitment to college as a high school kid, when it's firm, it's going into your senior year, this is a one-time thing. So I get why that's a big deal and a difference. However, it does mean that as Houston's getting more involved with those kinds of kids, those caliber athletes, the David Grosses, like Jaden Warren, Paris Melvins, these kinds of athletes, you're going to have more of that kind of a deal here. And that's okay. They can play, they can come to Houston, and they'll be all right. Now, I will say, as we're looking at this, we'll be following what the commitments are as the class continues to take shape each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. But the men's basketball programs kind of got their stuff rolling. Big weekend for basketball recruiting in the state of Texas just wrapped up. So I want to talk about that in a moment, what the Samsons were up to at TABC. But before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and summer sports full swing, pun intended, because whether you're all about the baseball under the lights, inside, or whatever, or you're swinging golf club, swinging that leg for a high-stakes soccer kind of play, FanDuel's the best place to get in on the action. If you're already following the action, you can make it more exciting too with FanDuel. Get in on the game while your buddies are getting sunburned at the beach. I like how simple it is to get involved with FanDuel, how easy the in-game action is as well. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Park Rangers Locked On Coogs here, and TABC wrapped up this weekend. That's the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches. They have different informal and different formal things throughout the year for high school coaches across the state of Texas, often in San Antonio, right? Sometimes in Austin, sometimes centrally, but they have a big event in the middle of June every summer. This weekend was in Duncanville primarily, DFW Metroplex, but the big games were in Duncanville. And you got to see a lot of top-end talent in this deadish period for AAU basketball, but a live period for recruiting kids playing for their high school teams. And while practices and stuff like that were limited, so it visually felt like a lot of pickup basketball with some of these guys, right? It is guys that play together a lot, right? So you got to kind of see, who's put on 10 pounds of muscle, who's going to have a new role this season, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. And the Houston Cougars, like many coaches, filled the stands. And it was funny to watch, like at TABC, some of these games are happening in like auxiliary gyms with 4-star talent on both sides of the floor, right? So you have a bunch of like folding chairs lined up with like coaches from Blue Bloods, both Sampsons, a handful of scouts, potential NBA personnel, like all kinds of guys watching these things, right? And so I think the name that jumped off the page, two names that jumped off the page the most, that had 3 different coaches from the Houston Cougar staff at least watch them, both Sampsons and Micah Conham, Reese Alston, class 2027 kid, and Bryson Howard, class 2026 kid. And these two guys both feel like must-gets for Houston. Reese Alston at Second Baptist in the city of Houston is son of Rafer Alston, NBA point guard, skipped Mylou, and one street ball legend, etc. But Reese goes to Second Baptist in Houston. Reese looks a lot like Daddy, and I will say he feels like a better scorer than that. He broke 20 in each game for Second Baptist. They were state champs in their division of TABC a year ago. Reese is a really talented playmaker. He may not have the fancy handle that his dad had, but certainly has the efficiency in the decision-making, and really, really elite guard prospect. Would be a great fit in the next guy in the line of Houston Cougar guards. We also know Reese loves the city of Houston, loves putting it across his chest in a big representative kind of way. He's been at celebrations at the University of Houston with fans go cheer on the Final Four celebrations. He's a big fan of Jamal Shedd, a big fan of Marcus Sasser, a big fan of Ladiki Giroux. He's a fan of what's been built at Houston. Great fit in terms of his personality and the culture fit there as well. Bryson Howard, though, I don't know if there's a kid in high school basketball that's had a better last 6 weeks than this guy. He's from DFW Metroplex area. Bryson Howard's father is Josh Howard, played for Dallas Mavs for a minute and is now a coach at, it's like UNT Dallas. It's not a Division I institution. I don't think it might be NAI. I don't remember. But Josh Howard's an NBA player. Bryson Howard is the prospect here. He's a 6'6" wing, and dude has a motor. Crazy explosive, crazy athlete, gets to the rim, gets off screens, gets in ISO. He had 37 points in his opener for TABC, with both Sampson sitting courtside watching him. He has currently scheduled an official visit with Houston on June 26th. And it weirdly feels like he's the kind of guy that he does have other visits scheduled. So I don't mean to say that Houston's the only guy in the race here. He's a high-end prospect. Both Reese and Bryson are like top 30 in their class, respectively. I do feel like kind of getting Bryson Howard down as the first in that class would kind of set the stage for a really dominant 2026 class to kind of follow up a dominant 2025 class as well. A couple of notable guys that weren't there that are also on Houston's radar, but were not participating in the weekend. Christian Gibson, Katy Maid Creek kid, is consistently ranked the number one 2026 kid in the Houston area. He was not, Maid Creek was there. He was not there. He plays at Houston Hoops. He's alternated between first and second in EYBL, Nike's AAU circuit in scoring. So when you don't hear about him from the weekend, because he wasn't there, David Adkins, who plays at Oak Cliff's Faith Family Academy, moved to Nike EYBL Scholastic circuit for next season. He's a big-time prospect that has Houston on his radar. I think they're in his like top 8 or whatever. If I saw the graphic right, that might have been a reporter, not him. But either way, he wasn't there either. Oak Cliff Faith Family was not there. I did think it was interesting to see Houston at 2 different prospects, though, that I think you should keep on your radar as well. First, this Austin Gooseby kid. This town is called Melissa, North Texas town. Really talented roster for what it's worth. A really talented basketball program. But that Gooseby kid can go. Right hand, left hand, finish with 2 hands above the rim. Shoots it from 15 feet, shoots from 30 feet. The kid can just flat score. And while there's some stuff to shore up on the defensive side of the ball, it's not an effort thing. The kid is moving, high speed, high flying. I mean, he is after every ball. You could question something like, did you need to maybe go that aggressive for that one, get the foul called, kind of decision making, but you always rather dial those guys back. Gooseby is a really, really good athlete, really, really good basketball player. And saw Mike Econom there at his first game for sure against Green Hill School from DFW Metroplex. Great battle there, 1-point game. Gooseby for Skip Jackson Thompson from Green Hill, but really, really impressive outing there. The other one I saw Houston at watching was Friendswood. I think people don't think of Friendswood as the basketball powerhouse necessarily. But this Chase Richardson kid, he's a 2027 point guard, 6'2", good balance, good athleticism. When I talk about like Bryson Howard having a great 6 weeks or so, you could say the exact same thing for Chase Richardson, who's playing as a 2027 kid on TJ Ford's club. TJ Ford's club is a 3-stripe, so an Adidas circuit team. He's playing on their 17U team, so playing up a year, and he's really having a good AAU season. So Houston Cougar coaches watching him play as well. Eyes got to be kept over there because Houston's watching him. And frankly, he would be another one of these guys that like aggressive, full speed, full court defender when you need him to be, but really good decision maker with the ball. I think Richardson is – look, as a white point guard, I think you're going to hear this kind of thing a lot, but he is deceptively athletic, and like suddenly he just goes from first year to fourth year without you even realizing it's happening. And I don't know that I knew Houston was looking at him until TABC happened and the coaches made their way over to watch him play. Now, Richardson's worth watching, so I get it. Have not seen anything about an offer, have not seen anything like that, but they did go watch the guy play, and he is really impressive to go watch play, right? So I would keep him. I would keep Gooseby. Gooseby could very well end the next school year season as the number 1 kid in the state of Texas if things line up for him next year, right? So Gooseby from Melissa, Texas. Chase Richardson from Friendswood, Texas. We know about Howard. We know about Alston. Know about Gibson. Know about Adkins. And those are just guys from the state of Texas. Remember, TABC is just a state of Texas event. So I would stress that they're obviously the national guys, Christian Collins and stuff like that. But the state of Texas 2026 and 2027 class, if Houston can lock up the best of those classes, they're going to be okay regardless of what happens nationally. Now, it'd be nice pulling those guys too and talk about that if and when it happens. They are really, really close with Caleb Holt. He's got Houston and like the top couple schools they're always talking about with him, Christian Collins and so on. But these Texas kids are something to behold. Now, I want to try something new in a second in the third segment, but first, Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs here. I want to try a new third segment idea. Full disclosure, I can tell by watching the analytics roll in that not every one of you sticks around for the full third segment, but if you do, I want to reward you, and I want to talk through these like thought experiments I end up having about the Cougs. I've got a first one to break down, and if you want to submit a potential third segment thought experiment, you can email your idea in a video. We might even play it if it's a PG video on this show. If you have your question, your comment, your concern, or just your thought experiment to locoogspod@gmail.com. But my third segment thought experiment for the day is I feel like with the NBA Finals having just wrapped up and Jarace Walker being on the Indiana Pacers, who kind of felt like had the sails taken out from under them or out from over them, with the Tyrese Halliburton injury in the first few minutes of Game 7, I felt like they were rolling or whatever, right? Jarace and his 2 years in the NBA thus far, people frequently say like could have stayed, should have stayed, and compare him with other guys and whatever. And I wonder if people would rather have his career or Jamal Sheds and Marcus Sassers, Quentin Grimes, other guys in NBA pedigrees from Houston, right? Because with looking at Jarace, I should point out he was a top 10 pick, ended up on the Indiana Pacers from a draft night trade that happened before the pick happened. The Pacers knew they were getting him, right? It got picked 8th overall, which is a lot of guaranteed money as a lottery pick, right? As an Indiana Pacer, he played 75 games last season in the regular season, 15 minutes per game, shot over 40% from three, averaged 5 points and 3 rebounds per game. But he made a team that was, you could argue, an injury away from winning an NBA title, right? Obviously, they played the Knicks, and the Knicks played the Celtics, but the Celtics, all right. Anyway, Jarace Walker was on that team, and frankly, what it's worth, I think people downplayed his role on that team. Tony East does a great job covering the Pacers for Locked On, and he's talking extensively about Jarace Walker is a big part of the future of this team. They just hit this really blessing of a moment where they're good right now, so they have to kind of put the development juggling it with everything, right? But even in their playoff games, Jarace Walker played double-digit minutes in 6 different playoff games, had played in 12 playoff games before getting hurt in the Eastern Conference Finals. And when you look at the top 10 from his draft, only 3 of the other top 10 picks have been on teams that made the playoffs even. Obviously, Cason Wallace is on the Thunder, who just won an NBA championship, and the Thompson twins, the other two, right? And the Thompson twins, one's on Detroit and one's on Houston. The one on Houston plays a lot more, but you could argue that that's just randomness of it, because had Jarace been on Washington, who actually initially drafted him because of his trade deal, he'd be their best young player, right? He might even be leading them in points, depending on how many shots Kyle Kuzma took, or if he got taken by Charlotte or Orlando, he'd certainly be a starter. It's just interesting to be the randomness of where he got picked in the draft, determining what he should or shouldn't have done. Whereas Jamal Shed obviously played things out, and that year he played, his senior year, first year in the Big 12, is a lifelong memory of mine anyway. That he got taken in the mid-second round. For what it's worth, in the NBA draft that would have been after Jarace's sophomore year, the first non-7-footer sophomore or later taken was in the mid-20s. But Jamal Shed was taken in the mid-second round. He played 75 games in his rookie year as well. He did have a lot more minutes, almost 20 minutes per game, and played more as the year went on. But the Raptors kind of stunk. So they played Jamal Shed a lot, right, as a young guy. Marcus Sassers, late first-round pick, and while he played 57 games in his second year last year, in their first-round exit, he didn't play a minute of a playoff game, right? And Quentin Grimes has been in the NBA a little bit longer, but as he's been in the league longer, he's also bounced around some. He had some great scoring nights in Philly last year after they were kind of beaten, bruised, and battered and stunk. And I said to say that I think there's a lot of, when you look at like Jarace Walker and that decision he made a couple years ago, in reflecting on that, and part of the thought experiment is that, I guess, when in reflecting on that, as they, again, were just an injury away from winning an NBA title, it does feel weird to think that like people still think that was a poor decision. It feels very obvious that was a great decision. Money aside and all that, like, he is an active part of that team when healthy, and he took a nasty ankle injury that he's still not cutting and stuff like that on weeks later. He's shooting. We saw him, actively shooting and stuff like that in pregame, if you're watching finals pregame coverage, but he was not like cutting and planting and playing defense and doing all those kinds of things or anything like that. And meanwhile, he's a part of a deep rotation, and certainly once other guys got hurt in that Game 7, you could argue that had he been healthy, he'd run the floor a lot. He had kind of was teetering back and forth with Benedict Mathurin when he was healthy and available, and Mathurin had some big moments in the NBA Finals that had Jarace been healthy, maybe those are his minutes. I don't think that's, as we think through this, people like want to criticize. I think that's bogus. I don't know why people can be so critical of that. That seems very clearly to have worked out for him. He's been a great ambassador for Houston Cougar basketball. I think an ambassador in Keyshawn in football. He's been a great ambassador for Houston Cougar basketball in his time in the NBA. And frankly, the 5-star one and done coming through Houston, doing it the Houston way, and still getting taken in the top 10, right, has proven to other recruits like, hey, this will only help you, right? Come do the Houston thing. Even if you think you're a potential one and done, it's clearly working in that sense as well. And when you declare for the NBA draft, you don't know where you're going to get taken. He got taken by an NBA team in the NBA Finals. Would I rather be a guy, this is the real thought experiment, would I rather be a guy who's late in the rotation but for a team in the NBA Finals? Or would I rather be a guy playing a decent amount of minutes for a team that stinks? Or getting all the shots for a team that really stinks, right? I think Jarace made the right decision on a lot of fronts in this one. And frankly, I think most Houston Cougars, even the guys he mentioned, would rather be on teams that are winning, regardless. That's the way the Houston Cougars want to win. And that's part of the DNA and the culture, is win everything, right? And so I just feel like, that decision, people being critical, that's kind of crazy. I think it's a little crazy. And I thought about that more and more, especially because he had a loud Tupac shirt on, I believe, at Game 7. So whenever they went to a timeout, you could kind of see him. It stuck out a little bit. I thought about it a lot watching Game 7. And how, there's a different universe where Benedict Mathurin turns his ankle and Jarace is playing all those minutes. There's an alternate universe where he is the best player in Charlotte. There's an alternate universe where he's playing a lot more minutes in Orlando. There's an alternate universe where he is the leading point man in Washington. And I don't think if any of those things happened, people would be nearly as critical of it when he went pro. But I don't think he'd rather any of those things happen. I think it's different. And as we approach the NBA draft this week, we'll see what LJ Cryer and Jawan Roberts do. I bet they both could play in summer leagues. We'll talk through that when it happens. As more recruits commit, as more recruits get offered and things like that, we'll talk about those as well. Lots to talk about here in a off-season kind of things. Remember, if you want to submit a third segment thought experiment or have a question, comment, prompt, or video to send to locoogspod@gmail.com or social media. My handle's right there at Ainsworth512 on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. Wherever you want to bring up something to talk about here each and every day. Locked on Coogs is primarily Locked On Podcast Network. For your second listen of the day, I am recommending, much to my own chagrin, Locked On Big 12. So go check that out as well. Locked on Coogs, primarily Locked On Podcast. I'm your team every day. Go Coogs.